Hi, everyone. You are watching Passion Project, and I'm your host, Kat Margulis. Today, we have Jennifer Turliuk. Jennifer is an entrepreneur, writer, and speaker. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Huffington Post, Fast Company, Wired, and more. She is the author of How to Figure Out What to Do with Your Life Next. I will bring on Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I got really excited when I saw the word next in your book title. So yeah, I was wondering, it sounds like you've had some personal experience with what comes next after your career. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So I was dissatisfied in my corporate job, but I couldn't figure out what to do next. And I tried all the different strategies like career tests and career counselors and that sort of thing. But I couldn't figure it out. So I actually quit my job and flew to Silicon Valley to meet with and shadow with entrepreneurs, investors, and professors. And I just cold emailed a bunch of them and they were willing to meet with me. So I met with like the CEOs of Airbnb, Square, Kiva, like the CEOs or founders, which was pretty cool.
Nice.
And professors from Stanford. And I used what I learned from them to develop a career design process involving principles from quantified self, lean methodology, and design thinking. And then I started shadowing at a bunch of different companies and realized what I wanted to do, which was to become an entrepreneur. And then I wrote an article for Forbes about it that ended up going viral and people were asking for more information. So then I wrote a book about it and now the book just came out. So it's exciting.
Very cool. Like, I love the whole idea of design yourself, design your life, because I feel like so much of it is programming, right? We're raised from when we're little kids. Our parents want us to be safe. They kind of encourage certain things. Their parents did before them. So before you even start to wonder what might be fun to do, you've already been programmed to not look there. Yeah, tell me. So this is a whole stream of thought. This is a whole discipline.
Yeah, so the idea is there's thousands of different career options out there and it's hard to figure out which one you want to do. So this is a process that involves, as a first step, getting to know yourself better, which might sound like, oh, I live with myself every day. I already know myself. But have you identified your core values, or your purpose, or your mission, what you're looking for in a next opportunity? So instead of doing the spray and pray approach where you just apply for whatever you might think will take you, this is doing a much more targeted approach of figuring out what it is that you want and then making yourself the best applicant for it. And because over 80% of people are dissatisfied with their work, according to studies. And I think with that being the case, it's hard to make as big an impact on the world and its problems as you could if you found something you were satisfied in. So the idea is, getting to know yourself. And then from there, identifying your options and figuring out your minimum viable commitments or ways to test out those options to see if there's something you might be interested in doing further. And that could range from reading magazine articles, doing informational interviews, to more in-depth experiences as you get further along the line and narrow down which opportunities you're interested in, like doing shadowing or internships. And then from there, you're able to narrow to your top choices and figure out how to make yourself the best candidate for them.
I think it's really interesting because we tend to kind of go where's the opportunity rather than from dropping into our heart and seeing where our heart lands. So, and even if you're mid-career pivot or you get to reinvent your business, it's always more where's the opportunity? What is the market saying? So what's the benefit? Because maybe it's counterintuitive what you want to do to what the market wants. Why is it so important to follow our passion?
Well, if you don't follow your passion, it can lead to a lot of bad repercussions if you're in something that you're super dissatisfied in. It can affect your health. It can affect your life with others, your relationships. And it's also a $300 trillion productivity crisis in America that's directly related to job dissatisfaction.
Wow.
So it can mean that you're not making the full impact on the world and its many problems that you could be if you found something that was sort of at the intersection of what you like, what you're good at, what helps the world, and what you can make money at through doing. So I think it's something that's pretty important. And there's a healthy dose of serendipity and such in there too. But if you're just sort of like, I was thinking of an analogy the other day. Like, let's say you're a flower, a flower, it could either just blow in the wind with whatever direction is it's being pushed, or it can be like firmly rooted and grow despite what's coming its way, and it can be its own thing in the environment, if that makes sense. It's developing into its own piece or part of the environment that's symbiotic with the environment, rather than just going with what the environment is pushing it to do.
Yeah, and with all those super successful and prolific people that you interviewed, was there a case for the fact that you would be more successful if you actually followed your heart and your passion?
I mean, it definitely seemed that way. Like when I was sitting with one of the founders of Airbnb, Joe Gebbia, we were sitting in this cafe in San Francisco that he had chosen, that they were doing this like really like artful pouring with the coffee and everything. And speaking to him, it was just like, I don't know, it was so magical. I almost felt like I was going to faint at one point, because he was like, look at that house. Like, we unlocked it. Like, you couldn't access it before, but now it's like unlocked and people can go there. And it's just like, whoa, like he was so passionate about it. And
Yeah.
now he's completely changed the game. So yeah, I think passion is a huge element. I mean, in their case, they spent years trying to get this thing off the ground, sleeping on air mattresses, selling cereal to try and eating cereal as their main sustenance to try and get this business off the ground. So
that's the story you don't hear, right? You just hear how it like blew up, super successful, but you don't hear like all the grunt work and the desperation before they finally made it.
Yeah, Paul Graham of Y Combinator called them like a cockroach because they wouldn't die. They would continue to survive. I don't know if listeners have heard this story, but they were running out of cash, and they had this idea somehow to buy boxes of cereal and brand them as like Obama O's or different brands, and they sold them, and that's how they made their initial capital to survive off of. And when I was meeting with him, he said, well, we actually had lots of leftovers of that, but not enough cash, so we were surviving off cereal for a couple months.
So did they ever like think about stopping? Like, did they ever go like, this is crazy, nobody's done this before, and we're following our passion, but there's no proof that this is going to work out? Did they ever like falter or?
We didn't get into that. I mean, I'm sure they must have thought about that at some point, but it seemed like they were pretty persistent. So
Yeah. And in all your studies and in all your interviews, what surprised you? Was there like some findings that you were like, wow, that's a game changer for you?
Yeah, well, when I was shadowing with the CEO of Kiva, which is a really cool organization that does microloans for entrepreneurs in developing countries, he had me as like his literal shadow. Like, different companies would let me shadow them in different ways. Like, either I'd be doing admin work or, doing strategy work or something. But in Matt's case, I was his literal shadow. So I would go to meetings with him and people would say, oh, who's that? And he would say, oh, ignore her. That's my shadow for the day. She's like an anthropological observer. And so one of the things that surprised me is at lunch, he said, okay, we're going to this park and this waterfall. And when we were there, he said, this is one of the most important parts of my day. coming and sitting here and just doing some deep thinking. And this was many years ago, so at the time I hadn't started up like a mindfulness practice or anything. So that was kind of surprising to me, was that was one of the key, most important parts of his day. But now, as an entrepreneur, I can definitely see that and why that's the case.
Yeah, I love that, like intentional living and intentional an intentional aspect to the career approach, like it coming from within rather than, like you said before, like going with the flow or going where you see the need or going where you see the opportunity. It's really more like a deep check-in. Where do I want to go? And then create the opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's a healthy mix of, what you want matched with what is needed in the market and what the world needs.
So what's your tip for somebody who is, either finishing up college or, thinking about a career change like you did, or even, finding themselves in the middle of COVID and their business model doesn't work anymore. And they're like, now what? What's next? What do you recommend as next steps?
So I would say first step is to get to know yourself better. There's lots of tools you can use to do that. Career assessments, meditation, journaling. I detail a number of ideas in the book. And then from there, answer some key questions like how you want your next opportunity to be, what you want it to look like size of company, whether you want it to be, relaxed or formal environment, like as much detail as you can. You may not end up finding that exact thing, but you could probably find something with a lot of it, and knowing what it is you want can give you a better likelihood of finding it. And then from there, identify all the different options that you think might be of interest, and then figure out small ways to prototype them, whether that's reading an article or doing an informational interview. And then after each one, grade them against your criteria that you set out. And I detail ways how to do that in the book. And then you can either narrow out some opportunities or keep them all on the list, depending what you found, and then go to the next round of finding out more information about each of those opportunities that's now in part of your culled down list, and figure out how you can learn more about them, and then progress through to learning more and more about them. For example, starting with magazine articles, then going to informational interviews, then going to shadowing or other different aspects along the way, and then narrowing down to your top 3 choices, and then figuring out how you can make yourself the best applicant for those, whether that's additional education, creating a portfolio that's targeted at that opportunity, creating a video application. Those would be some of my top tips. And that's a really neat way and a low investment way to go through thousands of different options to then get deeper and boil it down to 3. And I'll give an analogy. It's like, instead of just going to law school without having ever experienced a day in the life of a lawyer and then spending 4 years to end up in a job where you suddenly discover, oh, I don't know if I like this. See if you can do an informational interview with a lawyer before investing all that time. See if you can spend a day with a lawyer, a week, or even a summer. Make sure it's something you want to do before investing a huge part of your life doing it.
Yeah. And I love that you talk about values. I don't think people really think about it. They think about, what do I want to do? What am I good at? Values, I rarely plays in. So tell me about what you found out about values and how important they are, and especially with the people you interviewed, and how did that come up for them?
Well, I just found that identifying your core values and making your decisions around them are so important. For example, one of my core values is integrity. And so, that sort of dictates what career choices I might make, what kinds of people I might hang out with. And it acts as a great filter for me to figure out what I want to do and who I want to spend my time with. And yeah, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I've met have cited core values as a really important part of their lives as well as of their businesses. And it's interesting to look at companies' core values, because a lot of them have them posted on their website, or you can learn about them through the interview process and see how they might match up to your core values or be different, and see what points of alignment and points of difference there might be to help you decide how seriously you want to pursue that opportunity.
Yeah, and now you work with children, right?
That's right.
Do you guys talk about this sort of thing? Like, does it come up with kids? I know my kids are always like throwing different stuff out all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we have our core values as a company, and then we have core values that we try to teach kids and have them resonate with. And we also invite them to create their own core values too. So yeah, it's really important.
So maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do with kids, what you created.
Sure. So I have a company called Maker Kids, which runs award-winning program camps and parties for kids on coding, robotics, and Minecraft that helps kids build confidence, social skills, resilience, and a positive relationship with technology. So we actually started the first makerspace for kids in the world. And now through COVID, we're running virtual programs online and having kids from all over the world access them. It's pretty exciting.
Nice. What do you say to parents that might fall into the trap that they've inherited as far as like what you encourage where you encourage your kids to go?
You mean
When it comes to like career choices, when they're starting to talk about when I grow up one day, do you have any advice or tips for them?
Well, in my book, I encourage career seekers not to blindly follow advice of parents, like without questioning it, because, and so I guess my advice for parents would be to recognize that when you were choosing your career and when your kids are choosing their career, it's a completely different world. And so there's certainly a lot of insight you can give as to your experience, but also I think it's important for children and recent graduates to seek and develop their own insights and processes. Because, for example, there's some crazy stats out there that say that by 2030, 85% of the new jobs that will be coming out then don't exist today, like the new types of jobs. So like basically only 15% of the jobs will be retained. That is a crazy.
Wow. That is, I can't even wrap my head around how do you even come up with a plan when there is like no map.
How do you educate kids for jobs that don't exist? It's a whole thing. Like it's a whole thing. But I guess with that in mind, with respect to your question, in terms of parents, I would just say to try and help kids develop key skills, transferable skills, which I think the most important ones these days are in the areas of STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, and math, as well as social emotional skills that can then be applied to, so both of those can be applied to many different types of careers. So it helps set your child up for success by helping them learn those skills. And then also to guide them to make their own choices that really sit well with them. Career choices.
Awesome, Jennifer. Thank you so much. A lot to think about. I'll definitely be having some conversations with my kids tonight. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited for your book. I'm excited for what that creates for other people. And thank you for being on my show.
Well, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks, everybody, for watching. This is on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube if you want to share it. And we'll see you soon. Bye.